Hey, and welcome to another 31 Days of Horror 2015 segment, Toronto After Dark edition. That's right. Today we are going to talk about a slightly controversial film, actually. It's part of the double bill of Sion Sono, and that is the film Tag. Now, for those of you who know Sion Sono's work, you know his stuff is it's going to be a little weird. It's going to be even his stuff that's kind of mainstream and straightforward is still a little weird, right? And this is one of six films he's doing in 2015. If you don't know who he is, you probably don't know any of these films, but you should. Love Exposure, great film. It's one of those ones that's it's a marathon to watch, but at the same time, it goes by like that. Suicide Club, Cold Fish. I'm trying to think of what else. Why Don't You Play in Hell? This is one of the 2015 films, I think. No, that's 2000. I don't remember. I don't know when it came out. But I think it must have been. I don't know. I think it played at Toronto International Film Festival. There's also Tokyo Tribe and Himizu and Hazard. There's a ton. There's a ton. But if you don't already know who he is, none of these titles are gonna help you out. Japanese, in case you didn't know that. So of course this film is subtitled. So if you don't like subtitles, you're not gonna like this film. In fact, like I said, it's a little controversial. Honestly, there's people like myself who really like Tag. Then there's other people who think it is a piece of garbage. For various different reasons. Honestly, the people who think it's a piece of garbage have so many different reasons why they think it's a piece of garbage, that it's absolutely... It's amazing. It's amazing. And honestly, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they just didn't quite get what the film was. This is not your straightforward story. This is not your straightforward film. This is not your straightforward type of movie that tells a story and you watch the story unfold and then you get to a climax and then it eventually comes around and you get a happy ending or a sad ending or an ending of any sort type thing. It's not that type of film. It's not. You can't even think of Western film styles whatsoever when you're watching this film, for a big reason. Tag is a film that attempts to do a commentary, a look at, and essentially the most obvious thing that it's looking at is J-horror. Yes. The next thing you might say, well, it also looks at anime. Yes, it does. It then also looks at just Japanese films in general and, the current mindset of a lot of Japanese films. More so towards the outskirts, the genre stuff, maybe the exploitation type things, the independents, rather than the big ones. But it's definitely a commentary on things like from Takashi Miike, definitely on that, stuff he does, all just the stuff what a lot of the popular Japanese audiences are looking for. It is very much, it's a social commentary in a sense. And I know a lot of people thought that this film was it's one of the things that they didn't like was it's so misogynistic. They felt that the film was, misogynistic to the point where it was they were appalled by it in a sense. And it's funny because it could have gone way beyond what it did. But what it was essentially doing was looking at how women and girls and and especially young girls and the school girls and that whole fetish and stuff that goes on in a lot of Japanese film, how they are portrayed, and then it's sort of kicking it up a level and sort of putting it in a context that was so obvious. Like, it's so obvious that, you know, this is done simply for that fact. We are giving you a shot of, you know, girls' panties simply because, hey, we want to give you a shot of girls' panties. It had absolutely nothing to do with it. It didn't need to be done, but they did it. Why? To put it in a different context. It's not, you know, in a context where you're necessarily, you know, fetishizing about it. It's more sort of, oh, here it is, and here it is, like, in your face. Why? Because I'm making you see it in a different light and showing you just how ridiculous that is, you know? One of the opening scenes is, it talks about, well, it doesn't, it's a, looks at the gore, the amount of gore that's coming out of some of these films, in the sense that here is a busload of schoolgirls, and, you know, they have a pillow fight. Come on. It's not a pillow fight to sell it because it's sexy and all. No, it's a pillow fight to show you, hey, listen, this is ridiculous. We shouldn't be doing this kind of stuff. And then what happens? Everybody on this bus, except for one of the main characters, Mitsuko, is killed. They're sliced in half, and blood comes spraying out of all the half corpses as they're sitting in this thing. The bus is literally sliced in half, and blood's coming out. Why? To show you how ridiculous it is. Yes, there's jar bending in here. There's gender blending. There's all sorts of craziness. It's I mean, some people, when you look at it on its surface, yeah, okay, it's got aspects of like the Evil Dead and the, you know, the gore things going there. It's got this journey through really weird worlds and, you know, Alice in Wonderland type of thing going on. But it's all played for like satire, like uber satire. One of the things that you, if you don't know J-horror a lot of it's ghost stories, you know, like The Ring and The Grudge, but the ones that you don't hear about, the ones that didn't get remade, and a lot of the times there's the films don't really connect very well. You know, the flow of the film gets a little jarred and things start, you know, it's hard to follow and you're kind of trying to piece together things, and it's hard to do because it isn't really explained to you, or things are just sort of weird. They don't seem to make any sense. Some of this has to do with, you know, the Japanese traditions and Japanese mindsets and Japanese film and storytelling, but also some of it has to do with just the fact that, I don't know, that's just the way it is. For some reason, you know, the filmmakers have a tendency to skip over important information, that they just don't give it to you, or they throw something out to you which I don't know if it's put there for a red herring or what, but it really has nothing to do with what's going on. But so it just confuses you. And Tag does this. It so does this. One of the things about this character who's going through this Alice in Wonderland journey is not only does she actually change who she is, there's I believe there's 3 main characters. One is the Mitsuko character played by Reina Trindle. The next one would be Keiko, who is played by Mariko Shinoda. And then there's an Izumi character played by Rina Mano. And they're essentially all the same person, but they're all different actors and they're all different people. Yeah, start wrapping your mind around this. Especially if you're watching it and you're not Japanese and you're reading subtitles and this stuff is going on. And people are changing, and you know, you kind of get with it. You're like, okay, whatever. It's sort of like a dream sequence type thing going on. Fine, I get that. We'll go with it. And it's so weird, and it's one of those things where things are changing and stuff is happening, and you're like, why is this happening? This doesn't seem to have any relation to what's going on, and that harkens back to that whole idea of, you know what, we aren't telling a story that really makes sense. We're mixing it all up, and a lot of people did not like that. They figured this is just garbage. Now, I will admit that, you know, the latter half of the film tends to get a little bogged down in that, and it doesn't come across quite as good. The beginning of the film seems solid, and it seems like it has a direction, and people get sort of sucked into that, and even though things get a little weird, well, they get a lot weird, but the way the story is told gets a little bit of weird, they're still following it, but then other things just sort of come out to place, like, and you don't quite understand where they're coming from. Obviously, Tag is one of those films where if you went back and you looked at every little aspect of it, and you looked at what they were and how they related, probably to Japanese culture, Japanese film, all that kind of stuff, if you had a huge amount of knowledge with regards to those, it would probably make a whole lot more sense. Of course, to North American audiences, especially if you're not into Japanese film or J-horror or anything from Japan, it may come off as just a bunch of weird, nonsensical stuff. And I get that. I get why you're not going to like it if that's the case. But I know people who do know quite, not maybe not extensively, but do know enough to see that there is all this stuff going on, and they should be able to see what he's doing, even if they don't quite understand why or where it's coming from or why, you know, like what the influence is there. They should still know, you know, they're smart enough that they should be able to take out of it that there is a reason for it. Now, and you know what, there may be even parts in there where there's no reason for it. That's the that's the thing, right? Yeah, Japanese film is definitely not for everybody. For all of you who have gone out and, you know, you watched Hansu, or, you know, House in English from Criterion, you've watched that, you're like, wow, this is some batshit. That's an old film. That's an old film. You know, you probably only know Japanese film in terms of, you know, the Godzilla films, or maybe, you know, maybe some anime, the most popular animes. But if you go into the, you know, the more obscure animes, some of those things, they make no sense. I mean, even some of the popular ones, like Evangelion, check out that original ending, right? A lot of people were completely lost by that. In fact, they've redone that ending how many times to try and tell that story? They've retold that story how many times to try and get you know, the message across? And that is one of the, you know, like, super popular animes. So this is what, you know, Tag is poking at, is doing a satirical comment on, and the most part, it's a comment on women, girls, and their portrayal, how they're used, how they're shown in film, specifically Japanese film, J-horror, and anime. And that's carried on all the way through the film, right to the end. It's more obvious at the beginning and perhaps at the end than it is sort of, you know, to the half to the 3/4 mark. It gets a little murky. It's not, you don't really notice it as much, but it's still there. But yeah, Tag is one of those films where you could write and write and write. You could probably write an entire book on what Tag is about and why those things are important and why it is portrayed the way it is. It's not just stuff thrown down for the sake of nothing, though there is probably some of that in there. I wouldn't be surprised. But that being said, Tag, I'm not going to recommend you see it. I'm going to let you make up your own mind, knowing that it's not, you know, though people will, you know, the marketing guys will, you know, spew this out, and you'll look at the trailers and it's, you know, it's schoolgirls and they're, you know, it's gore fest and it's, you know, it's gory horror and it's, you know, from you know, the director Sion Sono, and, you know, like this is what they're going to try and sell you on. Realize this, it is a bizarre fest. It is a real weird ride that means something. It's not just something on the surface. If you just see it on the surface, you're not going to like it. More than likely, you're not going to like it. You're not going to get it. and it's not going to be something you enjoy. But if you open your mind up, maybe you go watch, you know, good 10 or 20 animes, 10, 20 J-horror films, and 10 to 20 Japanese films over, you know, a long berth of time to get an idea of Japanese film before you jump into Tag and see what's going on. Then maybe at the time you'll come to the same realization that I am, that Tag is a piece of art and a piece of crazy satirical commentary on Japanese cinema. And you'll enjoy it as such. What can I say? It's yeah, it's not for everybody. Yeah, so that concludes this segment of 31 Days of Horror. I still have some more to come and more Toronto After Dark Film Festival coverage. So stay tuned. Till next video. Tag, you're it.